It's April 22nd, 2025. It's a Tuesday. I'm glad you're here. We've got a great show today. Great. We're going to continue our theme of tariffs and really how it affects you and me. Now, let's keep in mind, things don't always affect you right away. Now, we know that this is like day 91 of the Trump administration, and in 91 days, historically, we've gone from pretty stable to chaos. I'm not sure how to else describe that. Many people think that this is a result that Donald Trump really has lost touch. And the people he had in his first White House, a lot of those people were moderates, were in the middle. They kind of knew how the world structure was made. They knew things you should do, things you can't do, and things you definitely don't want to do. Those people don't exist anymore. This particular White House is full of people that are yes men and yes women. So they're not going to argue much with Donald Trump over the really radical things he's done. I'm going to read a couple articles today, as I usually do. So I want you to get the effect here of what I call the Trumpian effect. So there's an article from Counterpunch magazine. Now, this is a pretty good magazine. And the article here was called Trump's First 100 Days, Meaner, More Mendacious, More Unstable. While the mainstream media was copiously tracing the physical and mental decline of President Joe Biden during the presidential campaign of 2024, Donald Trump's decline was largely ignored and downplayed. The media seemed obliged to track Biden's every move and stumble. Conversely, the media seemed obliged to ignore the worst of Trump's faltering executive decision-making, but even worse, believed it was their duty to make Trump's irrational utterances appear to be rational. You can't make this up. And this is true. The things that Donald Trump is doing, if Joe Biden did, it would be he's cognitively defective. The things that Donald Trump is doing doesn't make a lot of sense. Now, let me qualify this. To some people, it does, which is sad because if you can't see that there's something off here, I'm not sure you're in the same world as the rest of us. You know, I always want to make sure I understand the full picture. Sometimes we see through a glass darkly. It's true, but we can make some statements based on the facts we see. Now, in this case, this gentleman who wrote this article, and I'm not sure who it was, kind of compared Trump 1 and Trump 2. And I want to give this one paragraph a read for you because it shows you how off the rails we are. Whatever the reason we're off the rails. Cognitive decline, madness, or now nobody's there to control him. And he's just going to do things that are illegal, things that contradict the Constitution, things that contradict freedom. All these things he's doing is because there's no one here to rein him in. As I mentioned, the cabinet he has is a yes man, yes woman cabinet. The ironic example of the huge differences between Trump 1 and Trump 2 is the different handling of deportation cases that dominated Trump's first term and the early weeks of his second term. 7 years ago, for example, an Iraqi immigrant who was living in the United States for nearly 25 years, 25, was mistakenly swept up by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and deported to Iraq in violation of a court order. The Trump administration soon realized that a serious error had been made, and that led to a month-long odyssey to track down and retrieve a man who never should have been deported in the first place. So they made a mistake. ICE did. That doesn't happen, right? And they realized it, and they fessed up to it. And the Trump administration, not Donald Trump so much, but his administration, because they're moderates and realized they did an illegal act and there was a court order, they realized that it's part of their constitutional duty to obey that court order, and they searched for this guy, found him, and brought him back. Now, it wasn't great for this guy, but he did get back home here. Now, the case of Kilmar Armando Abrego Garcia, and I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong, has followed a far different pattern. Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi, I don't know where he found her. I'm sorry, I'm going to make a commentary here. She doesn't belong there. She's dangerous. She's as far off the beaten path in reality as anybody I've ever seen in this position as Attorney General, and she should be dismissed. I digress, and I didn't want to say I digress. I wanted to say I kind of revert from my initial thought. Anyway, forgive me. And getting back to the story. Trump and Attorney General Pam Bondi falsely referred to Abrego Garcia as being a member of the violent MS-13 gang, although he was never charged with being in a gang, and a government lawyer even acknowledged his deportation was an error. The lawyer was fired because of his honesty. But the total unwillingness to work to bring Abrego Garcia back to the United States differs from the efforts of the leaders of Trump's first term, when ICE immediately and affirmatively went to the court to acknowledge that it had violated the court's orders. There was a coordination between the U.S. Embassy in Iraq and the Iraqi government. The government itself conceded that the Iraqi immigrant had been removed to Iraq despite of the court order. Several months later, the Iraqi immigrant was tracked down and returned to the United States. No, that's not the case with Abrego Garcia. He still remains in El Salvador in a prison, and the Trump administration refuses to expedite his return home against a court order. So I bring this up to start this video off because this kind of tells us that we are in a different world right now. We are facing a man who does not care for the rule of law. And I know there are plenty of people that are going to comment, downvote or whatever, that don't like to hear this. The truth is, if you don't like to hear the facts and don't want to hear what other people believe, maybe you're listening to the wrong person. There are plenty of people out there. Sean Hannity's one of them. You can listen to him, and he'll have every talking point known to man to back up Donald Trump. But for me, this man is that was deported should be back home. And anybody in the way should go to jail. Anybody in the way of preventing that should go to jail. Pam Bondi should be in jail. Arrest her now. So this goes back to my whole thing about the economy and tariffs. It kind of full circle. You see, tariffs now is that catalyst that's making everything else react more violently. Now, the effects of Trump's tariffs are being felt by many Americans, many, but not every American. A lot of people live in bubbles. We talked about that yesterday. And many of his followers will give him a thumbs up no matter what he does. And we know this. Now, of course, I'm a guy that will kind of hammer home a lot of problems that he has created. I will bring that to you, and everybody says, can't you say anything good? I tried to think of something, and I can't. I mean, you know, he signed executive orders, and a lot of people cheered this, and that's why a lot of people believe he's so successful. He signed a bunch of executive orders. Outlawing social issues, outlawing certain things that portion of our population is involved in. LGBTQ, transgender. He signed these executive orders. Has anybody actually seen the effect of these orders in reality? Maybe they're not going to be visible in the places that they were visible in, which was a very small percentage of places. But for the most part, you're not going to outlaw any of this stuff. You can't. What did it really do? It made you feel better. Meanwhile, the world is in chaos. The more important issues are being overlooked by these people because they feel good that this is all going to work out. Is it? How do you know that? Because right now it's not. It's early, yes. But just as we sit here, just as I talk to you, things are happening around the world that are not in our favor. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. But Trump's administration is not good for a lot of people. How about for minorities, small business people getting crushed by the tariffs, government workers gone, low-income families, legal immigrants, a lot of them being deported, people who depend on a safety net provided by the federal government. They're out of luck. Things aren't so good for these people. But again, for those of you who don't care about those people, think that somehow these policies work and will work for you, again, I feel bad because it seems ridiculous that you would believe that. Someone sent me a comment. If you believed in MAGA, freedom, and a list of things that MAGA believes in, but none of those things are true. None of those things are happening. In fact, you want freedom, you're not going to have it here. He's talking about arresting people, anybody that's in prison to send to El Salvador. He's talking about stopping people from protesting. He's, again, not obeying the laws of the land. He's not obeying the courts. Go down the list of things that doesn't match what you're saying he's going to do. And I really don't give a crap about your illegal immigrant status, people. I don't care. Stop. I don't care. You know, it'd be different if things were actually being done on the up and up. It'd be different that actually all the people had their day in court, and all the people who we knew were the ones that were creating havoc, those few people, however many there are, 5, 10, 30,000, who knows, those were the people being sent out. But it's not. It's guys like this Garcia guy who's didn't do anything wrong. You know, it's guys that, like that doctor, I think it was in Massachusetts somewhere. She was here 25 years legal. They gave her notice to leave. It'd be different if it was honest, but it's not. You see, because it comes back down to they are not white Americans. So if they're not white, they're going to go no matter what their status is. Remember, right off the bat, Donald Trump tried to eliminate the 14th Amendment. Remember that? That went to court right away. So those of you thinking that he's here to fix all these things and we're on the up and up, he's not. He'll overthrow every constitutional line item he can. Every Bill of Rights line item he'll veto if he had the chance, if it gave him more power. It's the way it is. But don't believe me. Just look at what's happening. So let's get back to the beginning of this, the tariffs. Now, they're going to cause us a lot of problems. Let's talk about Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell, my buddy. Now, I've called him many times during the Biden administration, and he never returned any of my calls. I'm not sure why. But Donald Trump appointed Jerome. And right now, Donald Trump wants to fire Jerome. And I think it's because Jerome's not lowering interest rates. Now, basic economics, when interest rates are low, it causes inflation. It gets money going. People can borrow money, can take a loan out. Everything's cheaper, houses and cars. You can go and finance more reasonably. When interest rates are high, it's the opposite, right? Well, right now, when you have high inflation, you don't want to lower interest rates because it will add, inflation. It will create more inflation. But Donald wants economic activity because GDP, our gross domestic product, is being forecasted in the negative range by the Federal Reserve. So he's trying to fix that. But again, tweaking one thing puts something else out of a line, especially when you're Donald Trump and you don't really have a clue how it all works. So he's upset with Jerome. And he's especially upset with Jerome after Jerome came out in a press conference and said that Trump's tariffs could lead to stagflation. Stagflation is bad. It's worse than inflation in many ways because you have inflation and you also have a lot of other things. And I'm going to read you what Investopedia says stagflation is. It's an economic condition characterized by slowing economic growth, high unemployment, and rising prices simultaneously. Now, right now, we do have a slowing economic condition in our country. GDP is forecasted, as I mentioned, to be negative in the first quarter. A high unemployment isn't here yet, but it's starting to take a bite because as companies now can't afford to make products because the products coming from China, either they can't get them or they're too expensive, they're going to start laying off. So we're going to see that maybe later on this year. I'm not sure when. And of course, prices are rising across the board, even though Donald Trump said in his first day he was going to lower prices. Wow. Okay, so I missed something there. I might have to go back and look. Now, stagflation occurred in 1970, and it's very tough. The tough thing about stagflation is economists and policymakers have a difficult time dealing with it. So all the tools they use to fix, say, inflation doesn't work on stagflation because, again, you're having three things happening at the same time. So one fix isn't good for the other two. It's like medication. It might help you with your cough, but then it screws up everything else in your body. What do? So that's our big problem right now. So Donald Trump is in a battle with economic forces beyond his imagination. The economy is so connected to the rest of the world that now we're seeing how trying to pull it all apart, trying to yank the United States away from all these other agreements we have as part of this World Trade Organization, as part of the global economy, this is then starting a ripple effect. It's straining all the other aspects of our economy and many other countries' economies. The second big problem I see is that Donald Trump, as I just mentioned, is pulling us away from our allies. He's destroying our place in the world. You see, trade wars against your adversaries is one thing, but when you have a trade war against your allies as well, that's a whole nother thing. Now, this affects not just the rich countries, but the poorest of the poor countries. He has tariffed islands with no one on it. He has tariffed impoverished countries that have nothing to give and have no tariffs at all. It's just absurd. We don't live just in a glass bubble. We live in a global landscape. Everybody kind of knows what's going on. There's not a lot of secrets today. It comes down to that if you were my enemy and you were my ally, why don't they then get together and say, hey, maybe we can help fight this bully on the block? How's it say, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? We're starting to see that. And I do have another article I'm going to read a little bit out, as I usually do. It's from the same Counterpunch magazine. The United States is imploding. The reign of Donald Trump is not only challenging and threatening the very foundations of its constitutional democracy, it is calling into question the U.S.'s post-World War II hegemonic role. Empires or hegemonic powers rise and fall. Often they are defeated by emerging powers. Sometimes their decline takes place over time, but rarely do they self-destruct as spectacularly as the U.S. is doing. The U.S. implosion is dramatic in its intensity and rapidity. In just over 3 weeks, Donald Trump has been able to redefine the United States' position in the world from a global power to an international outcast. Despite whatever military and economic power the U.S. still has, its imagined and global leadership have been undermined by President Trump's foreign policy decisions. I've been talking about this for a while, and the reason I keep making this point today, because it's hard sometimes to wrap your head around how interconnected and how the United States, being the hegemonic power of the world, worked. And this article goes on and talks about U.S. aid. And I'm not going to read that. It's a sore subject for me because it's one of the stupidest things this administration could do. They try to defund U.S. aid, 1.2% of the budget. Those policymakers that have worked with USAID, administration after administration, know the benefits of this program, know the benefits to countries who actually need help, finding water, with food, disease, vaccines, you name it. But the Trump administration and Elon Musk seem to think everybody is some kind of crook. As I mentioned in yesterday's article, some of the most wealthy people in the world somehow think they're being ripped off. People that have more money than some countries have combined. But I digress there. No, I don't digress. Forget I said that. I don't digress. We're spoiled. And that's kind of the theme I've talked about many times. We're spoiled. And now we're upset because we think that people are ripping us off. And of course, Donald Trump says this over and over and over again. To quote Peter Schiff, who supported Donald Trump's initial plans, and I'm sure Peter Schiff is a conservative Republican, but Peter Schiff, who is an economist and has a pretty big a firm that deals with investments, he pretty much will tell you that what Donald Trump's doing is a disaster. It's not going to work. And this is a guy that supported him. Why would he say that? Because we're not being ripped off. And I'm going to go back a little bit here. Let me go back. Bear with me. So we're being ripped off. Here's the problem. And here's what Peter Schiff has kind of echoed the things I've said. This is exactly what he said. He said, A, the United States was never ripped off. We lived above our means. We do. America has lived above their means. I've made mention in the Biden administration, I've actually had videos showing all the storage units with people filled with junk. Filled with junk. I showed people with their garages. They can't get in because there's junk in there. We've lived a life that no other country in the world could live. Yet they're the bad guys. Our trade deficit is too high and they're ripping us off. That's what Donald Trump says, right? Well, he's wrong. It makes no sense if you know what you're talking about. He doesn't. And as Peter Schiff mentioned, we lived above our means for decades. We bought tons of Chinese imports, cheap, that we can buy here, fill our garages up, fill our attics up, fill storage units up. And yesterday I talked about a Canadian writer named Stephen March who did a tour of the United States during the 2024 presidential campaign. He found a hot dog stand selling hot dogs for $1.99 with a machine that if you pushed, you can get all the free cheese sauce and ketchup you wanted, all for $1.99. And he said you could not explain that whole system to a child, to a teenager, to an adult somewhere in another part of the world who could not understand that that actually exists. Yet we sit here and complain, worry about things that are very minor in the big scheme of the world. We worry about it because we're spoiled in America. Back to Peter Schiff. He said, we are spoiled. We lived above our means. We sent money to China. You're right, we did. And they sent us cheap goods. Goods that even right now we can't make. There's no factories that make half the stuff that China sends us. We have cars. Yeah, we can make cars here. We can make certain things. But the 90% of the stuff that comes from China, we can't. So we sent them money. We went into debt. They bought our debt. They bought our debt, giving us the ability to live above our means. So what did the Chinese, for instance, do with that money that we sent them? The money we spent on all those Chinese goods. They bought stocks and bonds, inflating the stock market. A good thing. Everybody was doing fine. They didn't just pocket it. They weren't living high off the hog on it. They invested it back. It helped us. But now, those countries that were tariffing, they're going to stop buying our debt. They're going to stop buying our treasury bills. And all that money that was sent out of the country will stay here. And it's going to affect you, my friend. It's going to raise inflation. It's going to make things more expensive. And as the dollar collapses, the same thing. Your money will buy less. You see, it was a win-win situation. That's what we want, is a win-win. Could we do better? Yes, but you don't go to war, as I mentioned before, over things you can negotiate face-to-face. But we didn't want to do that. Once again, the unhinged president will just slap tariffs on everybody. Islands with penguins on it, no people. Poor countries, rich countries. Doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense. And right now, we have to all consider how this is going to work out in the end for us. Trump is already backing off on many of these tariffs. He's going to back off with China again, I'm sure. He's now not tariffing computers and iPhones and stuff like that. This will change. He will back off. And guess what every other country will see? They will see him backing off. They will see that they called his bluff. And meanwhile, countries like Korea, Japan, and China got together and agreed to trade more amongst themselves. Mexico has made big deals with China. So did Canada. A lot of Canadian oil now is going to go to China. We are seeing a change in the world order, the global order. And Donald Trump single-handedly destroyed our position in this world, single-handedly made us the enemy of the world. They may all smile and shake his hand and agree to things he's doing, but behind the scenes, they'll get payback one way or another. And that's not what we want in America. The idea of America is to keep a global order together, to be the glue that did that. But that no longer is true. We'll see how it goes from here. Thank you for watching. God bless you. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share the video. Don't forget to watch our other channel, Nights Around the Fire. I have a link in the description box for that particular channel. God bless you, and I'll see you tomorrow. That's right, tomorrow, right here on the David Tomsic Show.